I watched my husband walk into our charity gala with another woman on his arm, wearing the diamond necklace I'd been searching for. Everyone stared at me, waiting for me to break. But what they didn't know? I'd already planned his destruction. And honey, it was going to be beautiful. Before we dive into this story, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. If you've ever felt underestimated or betrayed, this one's for you. Now, let me tell you how I burned down an empire with nothing but patience and a pen. My name is Kendra Mitchell. Well, it was Mitchell. Now I've taken back my maiden name, and trust me, that's the least of what I took back. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning, to when I still believed in fairy tales and thought love could conquer all. Spoiler alert, it can't. But money, power, and a really good lawyer. Now that's a different story. 15 years ago, I married Trevor Mitchell. Back then, he was just a guy with a dream and a half-finished tech startup. I was a rising star at one of the top law firms in New York, on track to make partner before I turned 35. But Trevor needed me. He needed support, someone to believe in him, someone to hold down the fort while he chased his vision. So I did what so many women do. I put my dreams on hold for his. I left the firm, became his sounding board, his unpaid consultant, his cheerleader, his everything. And you know what? His company took off. Mitchell Industries became a household name, worth $500 million. We had the mansion in the Hamptons, the penthouse in Manhattan, the cars, the lifestyle. On paper, we had everything. But here's what nobody tells you about marrying an ambitious man. The more successful he becomes, the less he remembers who helped him get there. The late nights at the office became later. The forgotten anniversaries piled up. The way he looked at me changed from adoration to tolerance, to something that looked a lot like contempt. I told myself it was stress, that building an empire was hard work, that we'd reconnect once things settled down. I was really good at lying to myself back then. Then things started disappearing. Small things at first, a bracelet here, a pair of earrings there. I thought maybe I was misplacing them, but then my grandmother's diamond necklace vanished. This wasn't some piece of jewelry you could just overlook. It was a family heirloom worth over $200,000, with stones so clear they could cut glass. I tore the house apart looking for it. I asked Trevor if he'd seen it. He looked me dead in the eye and said I was probably losing my mind, that maybe I should see someone about my memory. That should have been my first clue, but I was still playing the good wife, still making excuses. The annual charity gala was supposed to be my night. We'd founded this organization together to help underprivileged youth get access to education and technology. It was the one thing I thought we still shared, the one piece of our marriage that felt pure. I spent months planning it, every detail, every moment, making sure it would be perfect. 500 guests, all of high society, press everywhere, cameras ready to capture what should have been our finest moment together. Trevor said he'd meet me there. He had a last-minute meeting that couldn't wait. I should have known better. I got ready alone in our bedroom, zipping myself into a gown that cost more than most people's cars, doing my own makeup because our usual glam squad had mysteriously been cancelled. I felt the loneliness settling into my bones, but I pushed it down. I was good at that too. When I walked into that ballroom, I held my head high. The chandeliers sparkled above me, casting diamonds of light across the marble floors. Everyone who was anyone was there. I was smiling, greeting guests, playing my role perfectly. And then the doors opened again, and my entire world shattered into a million pieces. Trevor walked in with her, Brittany, his 26-year-old executive assistant with blonde hair extensions and a dress that barely qualified as fabric. But that's not what stopped my heart. It was my grandmother's necklace glittering against her collarbone, catching the light with every breath she took. My necklace, on her neck, at my event. The room went silent. I mean completely, utterly silent. 500 people stopped talking all at once. You could have heard a pin drop on that marble floor. Everyone's eyes swung from them to me to them, like they were watching a tennis match. And Trevor was smiling. Not embarrassed, not apologetic. Smiling, like he'd planned this, like this was exactly what he wanted. I stood there, frozen, while they walked toward me. Brittany had this smirk on her face, this satisfied little smile that told me she knew exactly what she was doing. She leaned into Trevor, whispering something that made him laugh. And then they were standing right in front of me, in the middle of my charity gala, in front of everyone I knew. "Oh, Kendra," Brittany said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Trevor told me you wouldn't mind me borrowing this. It goes so perfectly with my dress, don't you think?" She touched my grandmother's necklace with her manicured fingers, and I wanted to rip it off her neck right there. But before I could even process that, Trevor dropped the bomb. "Kendra, we need to talk," he said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. "I want a divorce. I've wanted one for a while now, and I think it's time we stopped pretending." The gasps echoed through the ballroom like a wave. Cameras flashed. I could see people pulling out their phones, already texting, already posting. This was going to be everywhere by morning. He kept going, each word a knife twisting deeper. "You've been spending money we don't have, acting unstable, making scenes. My lawyer will be in touch, but I think we both know this marriage has been over for years." His mother appeared from somewhere in the crowd, adding her poison to the mix. "I always told Trevor you weren't good enough for him, dear." At least now he's finally seeing clearly. I felt the tears coming, hot and angry and humiliating. Everyone was staring at me with pity, with judgment, with that awful schadenfreude that comes from watching someone else's life fall apart. A photographer stepped closer, his camera aimed right at my face, ready to capture my breakdown for tomorrow's front page. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I just ran. I locked myself in the bathroom, sliding down against the wall, my expensive gown pooling around me like a puddle of broken dreams. I called my sister, sobbing so hard I could barely get the words out. She told me to come to her place, to get out of there, to just survive the night. But as I sat there on that cold bathroom floor, something shifted inside me. I looked at myself in the mirror, mascara running, lipstick smeared, looking exactly how Trevor wanted me to look, broken, defeated, done. And that's when I decided I wasn't going to be any of those things. I wiped my face, fixed my makeup as best I could, and walked out of that gala with my head high. Let them take their pictures, let them write their stories. They had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I was everywhere. Every gossip site, every social media platform, every news outlet that loved a good scandal. CEO Trevor Mitchell moves on, wife blindsided at charity event. There was my face, mid-sob, captured for the world to see. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Friends calling with fake sympathy, acquaintances fishing for details, Trevor's lawyer demanding I vacate the house within 30 days. He'd frozen our joint accounts. I couldn't access a penny of the money I'd helped him build. The prenup I'd signed 15 years ago, when I was young and in love and stupid, gave me almost nothing. But here's what Trevor didn't know. Here's the card I'd been holding close to my chest for 15 years. Before we got married, before I gave up everything for him, my grandmother passed away. She left me a trust fund that I never told him about. Back then, it was worth about $20 million. I never touched it, never mentioned it, kept it completely separate. Trevor thought I came from nothing, that I'd married him and he'd given me everything. He had no idea that trust fund had been growing, compounding, investing wisely for 15 years. It was now worth $89 million. And he didn't know it existed. I called everyone I knew who could help me. First was Andre Washington, an old friend from law school who'd become a detective specializing in financial crimes. Then Lisa Rodriguez, a forensic accountant I'd worked with years ago who could find money hidden in a haystack. Then Gloria Hampton, my old mentor from the law firm, who'd gone on to become one of the top divorce attorneys in the state. I told them everything, and they told me to bring them every document, every receipt, every piece of paper I could find. What we discovered made my blood run cold. Trevor hadn't just been unfaithful, he'd been stealing. For 3 years, he'd been systematically embezzling money from his own company, from our foundation, from investors who trusted him. Shell companies with fake names, fraudulent contracts, money disappearing into offshore accounts. And Brittany wasn't just his mistress, she was his accomplice, her name on half the fake documents. Together, they'd stolen $47 million. My husband wasn't just a cheater, he was a criminal, and he'd humiliated me to hide it, hoping I'd crawl away quietly while he rode off into the sunset with his stolen fortune and his pretty young accomplice. Well, I had news for him. I wasn't going anywhere. I started playing chess while Trevor thought we were playing checkers. In public, I played the devastated wife. I let people see me looking broken, let Trevor think he'd won. I even had my lawyer call his lawyer to discuss the divorce terms Trevor wanted, terms that would leave me with basically nothing. Trevor got cocky, he got sloppy. Brittany started posting all over social media, flashing designer bags and private jets, living a lifestyle that didn't match her assistant's salary. They thought they were untouchable. Meanwhile, I was building a case that would bury them both. I filed anonymous complaints with the SEC. I contacted every investor Trevor had defrauded, quietly, carefully. I reached out to board members at Mitchell Industries with just enough information to make them nervous. I planted stories with journalist friends, little hints that something wasn't right at the company. And then I made my biggest move. Using my trust fund, working through shell companies Trevor couldn't trace back to me, I started buying stock in Mitchell Industries. A lot of stock. I bought out his biggest competitor and merged it with my holdings. I acquired shares from investors who were getting nervous about the rumors I'd carefully spread. Within 2 months, I owned 38% of his company. I was the largest single shareholder, and Trevor had absolutely no idea. I also made a friend, Brittany's roommate, a girl named Hannah, who was tired of watching Brittany flaunt wealth she hadn't earned. Hannah told me everything. How Trevor had promised Brittany marriage, a partnership in the company, a future together. How Brittany was already planning her wedding, picking out rings, acting like the queen of Trevor's castle. But here's the best part. Trevor was cheating on Brittany too. Multiple women, all thinking they were special, all being fed the same lines. When I showed Brittany the evidence, along with proof that Trevor had been planning to pin the entire embezzlement scheme on her if things went south, her loyalty evaporated like morning dew. 3 months after that gala, I called an emergency shareholder meeting. Trevor walked into that boardroom like he owned the place, which, technically, he thought he did. He saw the board members' faces and knew something was wrong, but he couldn't figure out what. And then I walked in. "Hello, husband," I said, taking the seat at the head of the table. Surprise. I watched his face drain of all colour as I laid it out. Every stolen dollar, every fake contract, every fraudulent transaction. I had paperwork 3 inches thick documenting every crime. The board members had already seen it all. By the time I finished speaking, Trevor was no longer CEO of Mitchell Industries. He was unemployed, and the FBI agents I'd been working with were waiting outside to arrest him. The charges were extensive: securities fraud, wire fraud, embezzlement from a charitable organization, money laundering. While they walked him out in handcuffs, my lawyer served him with new divorce papers. My terms, not his. The prenup was invalidated due to fraud. I was getting the house, the cars, the artwork, everything, and he owed me restitution on top of it. Brittany got served too. She was an accomplice, facing her own charges. But I'd made Brittany an offer: full immunity in exchange for her testimony against Trevor. She took it without hesitation, giving up every detail, every conversation, every moment. The mistress became the star witness, and Trevor's fate was sealed. The media circus that followed was even bigger than the Gala humiliation. But this time, the photos showed Trevor in handcuffs, not me in tears. The headlines read, "Tech CEO arrested for massive fraud. Wife was right all along." His mother called me, begging for money to help with legal fees. I told her I wasn't good enough for her family, remember, and hung up. Trevor's facing 30 years in federal prison. The company went into bankruptcy proceedings, but I'd already stripped the legitimate assets and folded them into my new venture. I rebranded everything, made it bigger and better, and yes, I became CEO. The foundation got back every stolen penny, plus extra from my own pocket. I made sure those kids would have the opportunities they deserved. Last month, we held our annual charity gala again, but this time I walked in alone, wearing my grandmother's necklace that the FBI had recovered from evidence. I gave a speech about resilience, about never letting anyone define your worth, about rising from the ashes stronger than before. 500 people gave me a standing ovation, and I know Trevor watched it all from his prison cell because his lawyer told me he'd requested access to the news coverage. I'm not going to lie and say revenge didn't feel good, it felt incredible. But you know what felt even better? Rebuilding myself. Remembering who I was before I made myself small for someone else. I went back to practicing law part-time, just for cases I care about. I travel now on my own terms. I wake up every morning in a house that's truly mine, surrounded by peace instead of lies. People ask me if I'm bitter, if I hate Trevor, if I regret the years I gave him. The truth is, I don't think about him much anymore. He's exactly where he deserves to be, and I'm exactly where I deserve to be. Sometimes karma needs a little push, and I'm not ashamed that I was the one who pushed it. So there you have it, how a betrayed wife became a billionaire boss and sent her criminal husband to prison. If this story taught you anything, it's this. Never mistake kindness for weakness, and never underestimate a woman who has nothing left to lose. Now, I want to hear from you in the comments. Was my revenge justified, or did I go too far? Hit that like button if you're Team Kendra, and subscribe for more stories about people who refuse to stay down. Remember, your setback might just be your setup for the greatest comeback. Until next time, stay strong, stay smart, and never let anyone write your ending. The pen is in your hand, so make sure you write a story worth reading.